flagship enterprise of science in general, certainly medicine, is to overcome old age and death, most doctors would not say so openly, would not even think like that. They would say, oh, we don't try to overcome death, we try to overcome cancer, we try to overcome Alzheimer, we try to overcome AIDS. But when you connect all these dots, I mean, there is no point, I think, when medicine and society will say, okay, we've managed to overcome cancer, now the rest of the things, people can go on dying from that.
Well, welcome everybody to this conversation about Yuval's new book, Homo Deus. And Yuval, I'd like to begin to see if I understand the main argument of the book, which is that we've managed to overcome the three great scourges of humankind historically, starvation or famine, plague or disease, and war or violence. We've more or less solved those three problems.
Not solved, but really turned them into manageable challenges, which is something at least a bit less extreme than saying that we've solved them.
Yeah.
I come from Israel, so I definitely know that at least war and violence is not completely solved throughout the world.
Right. But most of the book, since they've been relegated to technical questions, moves on to an alternate trio of challenges that you see as the challenges we face now in the 21st century instead, namely immortality, happiness, and divinity.
Yes.
So I wonder if we could take each of those three challenges in turn, beginning with immortality. We're now, thanks to modern science, at the brink of ending death.
Well, it will take some time, I guess, but I think that conceptually, death has already been transformed. If throughout history, death was seen as a metaphysical phenomenon, something which is within the realm of theology and philosophy, the monopoly of priests and rabbis and shamans, and the only thing that could overcome it is some grand metaphysical gesture, like, I don't know, Christ's second coming. So now death has already been transformed into an engineering problem, a technical problem. People don't die because God said so. People always die, at least according to science, because of some technical glitch, some technical failure. And the idea is that every technical problem has, at least in theory, a technical solution. So death is being shifted from the realm of the theologians and the rabbis and the shamans to the realm of the engineers. And we don't have to wait until Christ's second coming in order to overcome death. A couple of geeks in a laboratory can do it if you give them enough time and money.
And there are wealthy people in Silicon Valley who are keenly interested in this and who have invested large sums, haven't they, in discovering a cure for death.
Yes, not only in Silicon Valley. I mean, I think that the flagship enterprise of science in general, certainly medicine, is to overcome old age and death. Most doctors would not say so openly, would not even think like that. They would say, oh, we don't try to overcome death, we try to overcome cancer, we try to overcome Alzheimer, we try to overcome AIDS. But when you connect all these dots, I mean, there is no point, I think, when medicine and society will say, okay, we've managed to overcome cancer, now the rest of the things, people can go on dying from that. As a civilization, our chief value, our highest value is human life. It's the first human right, the right to life. And the right to life does not come with an expiry date. I mean, if you read the Declaration of Human Rights, it doesn't say every human being has a right to live until 90. That's it. After that, we don't care. It doesn't expire. So the greatest violation of human rights is death. A civilization that believes that the highest value is human life is locked in combat with death. Now, as long as you think, oh, this is impossible, so people don't talk about it. But I think that now we are really turning a corner, and more people, certainly in Silicon Valley, but also in other places, start saying openly that this is not impossible. It may take some time and effort, and it won't necessarily be available for everybody. I mean, equality is out, but immortality is in. I think could be a good motto for what's happening. But eventually, we might reach that point.
You have an amusing quote on this subject from Woody Allen, who was asked if he hoped to live on forever through the silver screen, and he replied, "I'd rather live on in my apartment." and now, so you're reporting, and this is true of many of the trends that you identify in the book. You're reporting on the ambitions and the projects and the logic, I suppose, of these of modern science and of those of us who invest our hopes and our money in these projects of immortality, happiness, and divinity. But you also, in the book, and I think this is one of the great strengths of the book, you do allow yourself, from time to time, an opinion about whether the project is worthy or misguided. So let me put it to you directly, Yuval. Do you think that death is a disease that we should try to cure?
Oh, it's a good question. I think that death occurs only due to diseases that we should cure or try to cure. I wouldn't put it as the first priority of humankind in the 21st century. I have more of a problem with the order of the agenda rather than with the item itself. I think we have more pressing issues than trying to achieve immortality, especially because it's likely to be immortality for a very small segment of the population. But with the basic idea of extending human life indefinitely, I don't think there is something in principle objectionable there.
Well, let me put to you the strongest counter-argument to aspiring to immortality. And that is, and you recognize it in the book, that it's the idea that the fact that we die is somehow connected to living a life with meaning. What do you say to that counter-argument to the project of immortality?
I don't think life has any meaning. So in that sense, it's not a strong counter-argument. I know that many religions and philosophies have based the meaning of life on death and what happens after death, but I think these are all fictional stories that people have invented through history. They are not the truth. And I would kind of rephrase the question. I mean, when people speak about immortality, they have this notion of, I don't know, you go to the doctor, he gives you a pill, you take the pill, you live to be 1,000,000. And this raises a lot of philosophical and personal questions. And yes, this is a very troubling scenario. But the people who talk about immortality don't have this kind of scenario in mind. They address each and every one of you and ask each and every one of you, do you want to live another 10 years in good health? The vast majority of people will say, yes, definitely. And after the 10 years are over, they'll come in again and say, okay, now do you want to live another 10 years in good health? Most people will say, yes, definitely. And like that, the idea is to cheat death 10 years at a time, a decade at a time. And for that, very few people can raise a principled objection, because almost everybody would like at any point in life that you grab them on condition that it's in good health. Right. On that condition, I think almost anybody at any point in time would say, yes, I want another 10 years.
And do you think it follows from that life would be better if it went on forever?
No, definitely not. There are many issues that you can raise if life is extended considerably, not even forever. Let's just say 150 years. Right. Ranging from, the political issues. Would you like to have Putin stick around for another 90 years?
Not only Putin, you could think.
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, if people live to be 150, Stalin would still be alive today, ruling in Moscow. So sometimes death has its advantages. And another even deeper problem is that when people talk about extending human life considerably, it's not really immortality, because immortality is a condition when you cannot die, no matter what happens. But what we are actually talking about is something different, which might be called amortality, that you don't have an expiry date. Your life can be extended indefinitely, but if you die, you die. That's it. You can't be brought back to life. If a bus runs you over or a terrorist blows you up, that's it. And if you try to imagine what it means to live in such a world, I think that anxiety will skyrocket. I mean, you mentioned Woody Allen. Woody Allen would be the most, unconcerned person in the world compared with people in such a situation. Because if you think, we today, we are willing to take many risks with our lives. I took a train this morning from New York to come here. It's risky. Something can happen on the way. I go, to India to travel. It's risky. But I know I'll die in the end, so I'm willing to take risks. But if you think I can live indefinitely, but if I do this, I may be killed and lose hundreds, thousands of years, then it's very likely people will become extremely anxious and unwilling to take even the smallest risks. And these are the people who have a good chance of paying for the treatments. Now, if you think about the other people, the poor people who wouldn't be able to afford it, if the rich will suffer from unparalleled levels of anxiety, I think the poor will be extremely angry, because throughout history, death was kind of the great equalizer. The poor people always told themselves, say in the Middle Ages, yes, now these rich people, they have all the good things in life, but they will die in the end, at least that. Just think what it means to be a poor person in a world when you die, but the rich continue to live young and beautiful forever. That's a cause for a lot of anger.
Okay. Well, but then, all right, let me ask you about the second new possibility. Instead of simply conceiving medicine and health as aiming at curing disease and repairing injury, biotechnology now enables us to aim beyond health at happiness. And the kind of happiness it would seem to make possible, biotechnology, genetic engineering, drugs, and so on, would be a certain kind of happiness, you point out in the book. Happiness connected with bodily sensations, pleasures, rather than activities themselves. Explain what you mean by that distinction and the way it comes out of a certain biologistic view of happiness.
Well, the idea is that, first of all, it's not enough to live. People also want to be happy.
Right.
And throughout history, people tried to make themselves happy often by gaining control of the world outside them. Gaining control first of all, of the natural world, of the animals, the lions and the wolves, and then the forests and the rivers, and also gaining control and engineering society and the economy, and trying to arrange the world outside in such a way that it will line up with our desires and satisfy us. And this just didn't work. For thousands of years, humans have gained more and more power over the world outside us, and we are thousands of times more powerful than our ancestors, but it doesn't seem that it has made us significantly happier. I think we'll be very hard-pressed to show concrete evidence that people today are significantly happier than in the Stone Age. So in the 21st century, the idea is, oh, we missed something. We gained control of the world outside, but actually, what really determines our happiness is the world inside, the biochemical world. People are never made happy, so the argument goes, by events in the outside world, like you get a raise, or you get a new job, or you find love, or you win the lottery. None of these things make people happy. The only thing that makes people really happy is pleasant sensations in their own body. External events can serve as triggers, but in the end, the mind only knows pleasant sensations in the body and reacts to them. As long as you have pleasant sensations, you're satisfied, you're happy. Once you miss them, you're not satisfied. And it doesn't matter really what happens in the outside world. So the thinking is, more and more common today, we need to gain control of the world inside us and start manipulating and shaping our internal biochemical system, our hormonal system, our brain in such a way so as to produce more and more pleasant experiences. And I think we are going in that direction, and I also think this is extremely dangerous.
And it's dangerous because the idea of happiness that underlies it is mistaken.
It's dangerous for two reasons. First of all, on a shallower level, I'll reach that point immediately, but first of all, we need to remember that so many things can go wrong. I mean, when humans gain control of the world outside, they didn't gain understanding of the world outside, only control. We could start controlling the animals, the forests, the rivers, but we had very little understanding of the complexity of the ecological system. So all our manipulations trying to shape the world according to our wishes ended up with the current ecological collapse. And the same thing may happen with the world inside us. We have very little understanding of the intricate balances, not just of the body, I think, but above all of the mind. We have a very poor understanding of what the mind is, how it functions. And the danger is that we will completely destabilize the world inside us in the same way that we've destabilized the world outside us. So this is one problem. But on an even deeper level, yes, it's a mistaken definition of happiness. Happiness is not pleasure. Happiness is not pleasant sensations. And going down that road leads to, I think, very dangerous places, especially because at the depth of the mind, the basic reaction of the human mind to pleasure is simply not happiness. It's not satisfaction. When humans experience pleasure, their basic reaction is to crave for more. No matter how much pleasure they experience, they just want to increase it. So you don't get anywhere. You just, you speed up the pursuit more and more and more, and you don't get anywhere.
Right. So it's a shallow idea of happiness.
It's a shallow and really mistaken idea of happiness.
And it's shallow by contrast to a truer, fuller, more adequate account of human happiness, which would be what, by contrast with this pleasure-based utilitarian idea?
I would say that the real source of happiness is knowing the truth about yourself and about the world, including about pleasant sensations, realizing that they are just ephemeral vibrations in your body that arise and immediately disappear and pass away.
Yeah.
And making these ephemeral sensations the most important thing in the world is simply such a big mistake. And it also hides the truth from us.
It's a mistake, would you say, because happiness conceived that way, or seeking happiness conceived as bodily sensation, pleasure, would make for a meaningless life?
I'm not so concerned about meaning, as I noted earlier.
I know, but I'm wondering here, I'm trying to pressure a little bit your ardent renunciation of meaning. I'm wondering if it isn't embedded in your rejection, which I think is well taken, of the purely sensation-based idea of happiness as shallow, as inadequate.
I'll try to explain my stance on meaning. I think when people ask, what is the meaning of life? Who am I? What am I doing here? What, in 99% of cases, what they expect to get in reply is a story. Homo sapiens is a storytelling animal, and we think that the meaning of life should come in the form of a story, like the big religious stories. There is some cosmic drama. And I just need to know the script. Somebody needs to tell me what the hell is the script of existence and what is my role in the cosmic drama. And once I know that, so I know who I am, what is my identity, what I need to do in life. And you know, so much of religion and art and so forth, it all revolves around that. I just saw not long ago The Lion King, the musical. Very deep philosophical ideas. And, you know, the climate, I mean, you have Simba, who is looking for who runs away and looking for who I really am. And you have the spirit of Simba's father, Mufasa, reveals, at the climax of the musical, Mufasa reveals himself to Simba and explains to him the cosmic drama, that you have this circle of life, that the lions eat the antelopes and the antelopes eat the grass, and when the lions die, they become grass, that the antelopes eat, and so forth and so on. And Simba's mission in life is not to shirk his responsibility as the Lion King, but to return to the Lion Kingdom and take control from his evil uncle and return the circle of life to its right place. And Simba is convinced, and he goes back and gets rid of Scar and so forth. And, you know, there's a story, you have a role to play, now you know the story, now you know your role in life, now you just have to do it. And I think none of these stories works. They are all inventions of humans, they are all fictions. An answer that comes in the shape of a story is very, very suspect in my eyes. This is my objection to the idea of the meaning of life.
Okay, but then let me just press you one step further, Yuval. You said the purely pleasure-based idea of a happiness is misguided because happiness, properly understood, has to do with winning through to the truth, pursuing the truth. But your conception of what that means, truth, we seek truth, you think, ultimately, if we do it right, in a storyless way.
Yes.
How so?
I think the reality...
The truth of our past, you're a historian. The truth, you began as a medieval historian.
Yeah.
And you still are a medieval historian, but also someone who speculates on the drift of events. When you're seeking the truth of the way of life in medieval society, you're seeking the truth. Can you get at that truth, do you think, without entering into and interpreting and moving within stories of the past?
As a professional historian, no. In order to communicate and you have to, again, humans are storytelling animals,
Right.
so it will always come in the shape of a story.
Yeah.
But because this is not like my profession, I create and shape stories, I know how I'm deeply suspicious of them. I know that functionally they are very important. You cannot have a society without stories, common stories in
Yeah.
which people believe.
Yeah.
So functionally they are vital. I'm not saying, oh, we should forget all about it, because
Right.
society collapses
Right.
if you don't believe in some common stories.
Right.
But if you want to really understand reality,
Yeah.
if you want the truth and not just stories, then it doesn't come in the form of a story. And therefore also, and you find it in so many traditions, it's not communicable. Like the Tao that can be expressed in words is not the true Tao. Because any attempt to express it in words, to weave some story, you've lost it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we could go on about this, but I want to shift now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll come back from another direction to the third trend or project, divinity. We've talked about immortality, and we've talked about happiness, the pursuit of happiness. You seem friendlier to the pursuit, by the way, of staving off death than you do to the scientific pursuit of happiness. Am I right about that?
No, I think also the pursuit of happiness is extremely important. Here, my main problem is with the method and definition, not with the deep rationale.
But the biotechnological pursuit of happiness, you're critical of that. You're skeptical of that.
As it is being done today, yes. Again, and not because I have a problem with the life sciences or biotechnology. I mean, the definition of happiness as pleasure is not something that came out of biology. It's something that biologists imported from society. I mean, the problem is philosophical. It's not biological. I mean, the biologists could have started with a very different definition of happiness.
All right, divinity. Making ourselves into gods.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's the project of modern science?
In a way, yes. Even more than immortality, science is really about transforming humans into gods. And I mean this in the most literal sense possible. You think about the abilities and the qualities of gods in ancient mythology and in ancient religion. And one after the other, these are our goals. We want to gain these powers. If you think about the Bible, for example, so in the first book of Genesis, what God does is to create animals and plants and humans, and we now want to gain this ability to ourselves to manufacture animals and plants and humans. And we even go beyond God. I mean, even if you believe in the Bible, the only thing the God of the Bible managed to create is organic beings. He managed to create the cows and the tomatoes and the giraffes and the humans, all organic. Now we try to go beyond the God of the Bible and create inorganic life, something he never managed to do, either according to the Bible or according to biology. For 4 billion years, all of life was organic. And now we want to create inorganic life. That's really, divinity is not far enough to describe what we are trying to do.
It's control is what you mean, and self-mastery, self-creation.
It's control of the outside world, and it's control of the world inside. Again, you see the two steps. Also, we tend to forget it, but in many ancient religions, like in biblical Judaism, there was very little discussion of things like the soul and the afterlife and things like that. The main task of God was to ensure agricultural production and victory in war. If you read really the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, it's all about agricultural production. It's about rain, it's about pestilence, it's about fertility. And now we are much better than the God of the Bible. I mean, in the Bible you have these recurring droughts. that the people of Israel do something wrong, gods become angry, drought, no water. Now, Israel has built, in recent years, a huge desalinization factory on the shores of the Mediterranean. And most drinking water in Israel today actually come from these plants, from these factories. So we can make God as angry as we like. I mean, he can stop the rains. We don't care. We still have water because science has managed to go way beyond the expectations of the ancient Hebrews.
You have a lovely passage where you say, looking at the world today, God seems to be making a comeback, but this is a mirage. God is dead. It just takes a while to get rid of the body. You think eventually the religious passions that seem to be stirring still and roiling politics will fade away?
No, they'll be shifted or transmuted into new battles, into new shapes. We'll see new religions emerging. I think the most interesting place today from a religious perspective is Silicon Valley. My bet is this is where the new religions of the 21st century are being created, will be created, and these will be kind of techno-religions, religions based on technology, religions that make all the old promises of Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism and so forth. They will also promise happiness and prosperity and justice and even eternal life, but here on earth with the help of technology and not after we die with the help of superhuman beings. And in a way, I would say that we've already seen the first big techno-religion in history in previous century, and this was socialism, that promised to create paradise on earth with the help of steam engines and radio and electricity. And it didn't work out very well, but that's the idea. And I think now we'll see the second stage of techno-religions, which will say, yes, electricity and steam engines, that wasn't good enough to create paradise, but now, with genetics and with the algorithms and machine learning, now we really have the tools to create paradise.
You mentioned algorithms and machine learning, and you write about artificial intelligence, where algorithms can know us better than we know ourselves, and that ultimately we may be able to give way, even human agency, to algorithms. Never mind personal assistants on Google, we can have actual devices that have scanned all of our email and all of our Facebook entries. Like on Netflix, they recommend the movies that you or I will like based on what we've already seen and liked. That's based on an algorithm. But in principle, you suggest that this could be done, if it were perfected, to make decisions for us.
Yes.
Not only what movies to watch, but what partners to marry. Can you imagine a time when you would trust a marriage prediction app to more than you would trust yourself in deciding with whom to spend the rest of your days, the rest of your 500,000 days, years?
I think it's an empirical question. It won't start with an application to choose your marriage partner. It will start with simpler questions. And empirically, if people will see that the algorithm gets it right, I mean, the decisions of the algorithms are statistically better than my decisions, people will trust it more and more. And authority will shift from me to the algorithms, not in one big bang, but gradually. It already began to happen. I mean, people navigating around a city, even their own city, not a strange city, they increasingly rely on Google Maps. And just because of experience, you reach an intersection, your gut instincts tell you turn right. Google Maps says, no, turn left. There is a traffic jam on the right. You go with your gut instinct, you get stuck in the traffic jam, you're late. You go with Google Maps, you reach there on time. You learn from the experience, you trust Google Maps more and more. And today there are many people who have basically given up their spatial understanding to Google Maps. And if for some reason the application doesn't work, they're clueless. They don't know where to go. And so like this, in many steps which already began, will reach that point. And I think the most crucial link in the chain will be the biometric data. Because at present, most of these algorithms, like the Netflix or Amazon algorithms, they rely mostly on external data about our behavior, what we search for online, and things like what we buy. But I think the moment we are now, 2017, is the moment when two previously separate tidal waves are merging together. We have the revolution in computer science, and we have the revolution in biology. And so far they have been separate, but now they are merging into one. And one of the key devices that will enable this union are the biometric sensors. Consider what it means if people constantly have biometric sensors on or inside their bodies. So with Netflix, you watch television, and Netflix monitors not only what you press on the remote control, Netflix monitors your heart constantly. Yeah. And you watch a series, and everything you see on the screen, Netflix knows what is the impact on your heart rate, on your blood pressure, on your brain activity, on your adrenaline level. With such knowledge, if you have enough computing power, and if you have, of course, enough understanding of biology, Netflix will be able to know who you are probably much better than even you can.
In fact, as you describe it, it occurs to me they could not only, using all of that data, figure out the very best movie for you, they could write a new movie
just for you.
Just for you.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned in the case of the GPS devices, if they became really good, and we learned from experience they know better than we do which way to turn, we would gradually give up on our own spatial sense and judgment and give over to the machine.
Yes.
Now, by analogy, put aside the case of marriage, let's take friendship. Suppose we discovered something similar about whom to befriend, whom to seek out as friends, and we learned with a very high-tech friendship, a kind of GPS device or app, that the machine could choose our friends better than we could, such that we would then, presumably, following the logic, we would lose the sense we currently have, the intuitions, the judgment about whom we should seek out as friends. Suppose that happened. Would that be a better world than one where we choose and rely on our own judgments for friends, do you think?
That depends on our metric, how we measure.
What do you think? What do you think? Where you lost your sense, your judgment, your intuitions about who would be a good friend, and you gave over as if it were a GPS to the machine. And the machine did it well, whatever that means. Would that
you're
be
satisfied with the decisions of the machine. I mean, you try, and yes, you're very satisfied with your new friends, much better than with your old friends, let's say.
Would that be a better world, do you think?
I think that yes,
Really?
but...
Really?
Yes, but... if that's the only thing that is different between the two worlds, then yes, it's a better world. The difficult question is, what are you really giving up? If you just give up the ability to choose your friends, then yes, I think it's a better world. You have better friendships. By your own standard, it's not Big Brother who decides the standard for you. It's not the Soviet government, everybody's your friends, comrades, let's fight together against capitalism or something. by your standards, whatever you want in a friendship, the algorithm knows that and tailors the friendships to your taste. And you can even, and people would say, okay, what about serendipity? Maybe you need friends that challenge your comfort zone. So you can have the best psychologists in the world going over millions of friendships and relationships and deciding what is the ideal level of serendipity in friendships, in choosing friends. And you could take this number and put it in the algorithm. And the algorithm, oh, okay, I know that 7.8 serendipity in choosing friends is ideal. So 7.8% of my recommendations will be completely random. You can even put that into the machine. What really worries me is not the question of serendipity.
Right.
It's what hidden qualities we are losing when we are losing that. Are we losing touch with ourselves, really? And what you see when you look at the last century of improvements and technological improvements, that with all the great achievements of humankind, humans have been losing touch with their body. Previously, in order to survive and make right decisions, you needed to be constantly in touch with your body, with your senses. You needed to pay attention to what you smell and what you hear. If you go to the forest to pick apples or to hunt deer, and you don't pay attention to what you smell and hear, you're dead in 10 minutes. So people were very aware, very connected to their bodies. Over the last century, precisely because of improvements like the health agencies monitoring our food, we don't need to pay attention to the taste because somebody made sure that it's not poisonous. And we don't need to listen whether a tiger is sneaking behind us because they killed all the tigers. So we are safe.
Right.
And so this is a much better world, but we wake up and we lost touch with our bodies. We are no longer really paying attention to what we taste and smell. And my worry is that the same thing may even happen on the level of the mind, that everything is being done for us so much better. So our ability to actually pay attention, to, in a sense, actually live, will decrease. Now, that's not conclusive argument against the algorithm that chooses friends, in the same way that it's not a conclusive argument, in order to return our sense of taste, let's abolish all these health authorities that check the product in the supermarket. It means that we have to make the effort, even though we don't need it for these survival tasks, to stay in touch and to stay attentive.
Okay, I have one follow-up about the algorithmic friend finder, but I want people to think of questions. Those of you who would like to ask questions, we'd like to hear from you. So gather your thoughts as I put to you one further possible objection to the algorithmic finder of friends. Don't you find, Yuval, that our deepest friendships are not the best, most perfect alignments between our desires and what our friends provide, but cases where our deepest friends change and challenge the desires we have, so that it could never be a matter just of fitting existing, antecedently given desires or preferences to the best matches.
I definitely agree, but again, this is a question of what is the metric of the algorithm. If you can give this metric to the algorithm. But I want you to find me a friend who will challenge me in such a perfect way that it will develop my compassion or my intelligence or whatever.
But that, I'm not sure that's capturable by a metric.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Because part of what makes friendship of that kind a human good depends on its unpredictable character.
But again, you could say that it's only a question of how much noise you want there to be in
noise? You call it noise?
This is how scientists call it. You know, the noise in the system.
Right, but the question is whether the scientific description captures the human experience, no?
Yeah, that's definitely a very big question. But it's really a question of whether the life sciences have figured out or not Homo sapiens, how it functions, how it works. And I agree with you that there is a significant chance that they haven't. And then they won't be able to translate such things into a metric which an algorithm can understand and use. Yeah. But I think we kind of, when we think about these issues, we have a kind of script in our mind of how it works. The traditional humanist script. Humanism is extremely afraid of anything that is superior to humans. And it always tries to find something wrong there. And the usual script, the usual humanist script with superior technology like algorithms goes like that. Act one, we create the supercomputer, the algorithm, the robot, whatever, which will enable a perfect world, utopia. Act two, something goes wrong. We forgot to take something into account. We inadvertently programmed the algorithm with some bug, with some bias. That's Act 2. Act 3, dystopia. That's the usual plot of like 95% of science fiction movies. And I think the really challenging, the really frightening scenario is not that, because this is a scenario that makes us very comfortable. This is the Frankenstein scenario. It actually tells us nothing can ever be better than you. There will always be some error, some mistake. It is impossible to go beyond the human. The really frightening scenario is Act 1, we design utopia. Act 2, it works. That's much more frightening. And again, to give a concrete example, I mean, in the 20th century, we had these two big, I think, visions, science fiction visions, if you want. You had Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and you had 1984, which is just back in the bestseller lists. And I think 1984, which is our basic fear, is very simple from an intellectual perspective. Nobody wants to live in 1984. It's obvious. The only question is, how do we avoid getting there? Brave New World is far more challenging and frightening, because it's not absolutely clear that we don't want to live in Brave New World. And I think this is like the really big challenge of the 21st century. It's not 1984. It's Brave New World, because I think most people, when Aldous Huxley wrote it in the early 1930s, I think it was obvious to everybody this is dystopia. But today, I would suspect many people would read the book and think, oh, this is utopia. And if you talk with many people in Silicon Valley, it's just Brave New World.
Okay. A couple of quick questions.
We have about 5 or 10 minutes for questions.
Okay. Yes.
In your book, you talk about, or you say the intelligence this way, you talk about how the kind of growing together of mankind is the central behavior of art, both in unifying and also contributing to the data stream. How seriously should we engage with nationalistic and isolationist politics of today?
I think nationalism is extremely dangerous in the context of the 21st century. Traditionally, nationalism was dangerous because, I mean, of course, it also had many good qualities of bringing people together and making them care about the community and so forth. But the major objection to nationalism was that nationalism breeds conflict and war with other nations. It's still a danger in the 21st century, but in the 21st century, the much bigger danger is that nationalism will prevent us from countering the global challenges that characterize this century. There is no nationalist answer to global warming. You cannot solve it on a national basis, which is why nationalists, at least sometimes, tend just to deny the problem. There is no global warming. And similarly with disruptive technologies, like bioengineering or artificial intelligence, you cannot confront these problems on a national basis. If you have a ban in the US on genetic engineering humans, it won't be effective if China or Korea is not on board. And very quickly, the US will break its own ban because nobody would like to stay behind. You must have global cooperation to confront these challenges. And this is why I think nationalism in the present context is very problematic and dangerous. It doesn't mean that we won't go along that path. Humans don't always do the right thing.
Who else has a question? Yes, on the aisle. Woman on the aisle.
So you were, it seems like you were not entirely comfortable with the concept of meaning and in terms of pursuit of happiness. And given what you just said, given the need for collaboration and cooperation among human beings, wouldn't there be almost a biological need for that might actually find its vehicle in policies or politics that are more communitarian and hence, globalistic, socialists taking care of each other and the community. Would that be one way?
Yeah, I think Homo sapiens is a social animal, but our natural group is not the nation, which appeared only in the last few thousand years. Our natural group is a small community of, say, 100, 150 people. To march forward in the 21st century, I think we need to balance a new global identity, global loyalty, with a strengthening of the local communities. It must go together. People are afraid of kind of a globalism because they feel completely alienated and out of place there. So it must go hand in hand, not with nationalism, but with local strengthening of local communities. And this certainly could be done. Humans don't have exclusive loyalties. Some groups demand exclusive loyalties, like ultranationalism and like religious extremism. You can have only one identity, one loyalty. But there is absolutely no reason to think in such exclusive terms. A person can be loyal to his or her family and community and the whole of humankind and his or her nation at the same time. Of course, there are sometimes clashes and conflicts, which makes life difficult, but life is difficult. So, you just have to handle these conflicts.
Okay. Yes.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding. You're saying on the one hand that there's no meaning to life. On the other hand, you're saying that it's very scary to lose touch with ourselves, which seems to me, with all this sort of technology, that you're finding meaning in retaining touch with ourselves. That that's meaningful.
Yeah, I would say that. My objection is to the idea of meaning as a story. The meaning of life, there is a cosmic drama, this is my role in the drama, this is the meaning of my life. I have to do X, Y, Z. I'm Simba, I have to go back and rule the Lion Kingdom. That's the kind of meaning of life that I find difficult. Because all these stories, at least to the best of my understanding as a historian, are just a fiction created by humans. They are not the reality. What is really important for me is to really see reality as it is, to be in touch with reality. And the most immediate reality is the reality of our body. I mean, you cannot have any hope of really being in touch with reality if you're disembodied, if you all your attention goes to things elsewhere in cyberspace and so forth. You start with the most immediate and basic realities of your breath coming in and out of your nostrils, of what you feel in your stomach, in your hands. This is the most immediate and basic reality for a human being. I think that a human that has lost touch with that reality can have no hope of being in touch with any other reality.
All right. How much time do we have? Do we have time for? Oh, okay. So we do have time. Yes, go ahead.
Combining a couple of your talking points, we basically have a massively expanded life or extended life, with 250, 300 years or whatever. In combination with what you said in Sapiens, that basically mankind became mankind because we collaborated. What kind of sense do you have? How would our sense of urgency develop? How would our sense of collaboration develop when we basically have no real urgency anymore? If we basically have a lot of time on our hands, will we still collaborate? Will we get out of bed in the morning? Is there actually something to do that we feel we need to pursue?
Oh, there'll be, I think, even if human life is extended, which is questionable, there will be a lot of problems and a lot of urgent problems to demand our attention and our collaboration, starting with the environment and the danger of ecological collapse, social issues like growing inequality, and even biological inequality for the first time in history. Bioengineering might make it possible to translate economic into biological inequality. So you will have could have very severe social problems. You could have very severe economic problems as AI and machine learning improves. We might see more and more humans pushed out of the job market because there is nothing they can do better than, or more cheaply and efficiently than an algorithm. And just as the 20th century revolved around the new urban working class, so the 21st century might revolve around the fears and problems and hopes of a new massive useless class. People who are useless not from the viewpoint of their mother or children, but useless from the viewpoint of the political and economic system. So there could be a lot of very urgent problems and tasks, even if human life is extended considerably.
I think we have time for one more. Let's go to the very back. Yes.
My question is if the bridge between robotics and AI was able to create something that had the sentience that is indistinguishable from a human being, would you define a difference between, is there a difference between that you see in the human spirit or humanity versus an entity that is indistinguishable from humanity but is inorganic?
If you can create sentience in a robot, then it could be a very different sentience than a human, but ethically and also I think politically, you wouldn't be able to treat it. You shouldn't treat it. It's just a machine or an object. Of course, the key issue is that it's very unclear whether it would be possible to create sentience, to create consciousness on a non-organic platform like a computer or a robot. In science fiction, there is a very unfortunate tendency to conflate and to confuse intelligence with consciousness. In most cases, the assumption is that once you develop artificial intelligence which is intelligent enough, by definition, it will also gain consciousness and sentience. And there is absolutely no reason to think like that. Intelligence and consciousness, or sentience, are very different things. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems. Consciousness is the ability to feel things. In Homo sapiens and other mammals, intelligence and consciousness go hand in hand, and we solve problems by feeling things. But in computers, it's absolutely not the case. Over the last few decades, there has been immense progress in computer intelligence and exactly zero progress in computer consciousness. And it might be the case that computers are advancing towards intelligence and even superintelligence through a different path than mammals. To think in kind of a geographical metaphor, in the case of mammals, natural selection has been pushing mammals towards intelligence through the straits of consciousness. Computers completely bypass these straits and advance towards intelligence from a completely different angle. And we might create super intelligent computers without any consciousness whatsoever. And this will raise a lot of difficult questions about the relative value of consciousness and intelligence. What happens when you have super intelligent but non-conscious algorithms in computers versus humans? So these are very, I think, maybe the most important questions that we face, coming back to what we discussed earlier about authority shifting from humans to algorithms. One of the things that really troubles me is that we might end up with a world, even a universe, full of intelligence and devoid of consciousness. And that's quite a scary thought.
One of the striking things about the book, Yuval, is that you talk about these high-tech, futuristic possibilities, but you never quite manage to conceal the human concerns that lie behind, forgive the expression, the stories you tell. One of the passages I especially like, talking about the drive for immortality. You write that if you think that religious fanatics with burning eyes and flowing beards are ruthless, just wait and see what elderly retail moguls and aging Hollywood starlets will do when they think the elixir of life is within reach. So you managed to bring together both the high-tech future possibilities, the dystopian aspects that may attend it, but also a sense of humor in a writing full of verve. So for that and for the discussion tonight, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As for the people that you mentioned the word deplorable. Some of those people are deplorable. Absolutely. I sympathize for them. I empathize with them. I'm sorry that they are miserable and have allowed their misery to be I'm sorry that they have allowed themselves to be tricked and put somebody in power who's going to make them more miserable.